all kinds of non-biblical definitions of fasting that simply will never result in a supernatural involvement of God. A true biblical fast is covering your mouth, not eating, and not eating anything. And it allows for drinking, and may I be very careful in saying, pure water. Very important that when you fast, you drink pure water. What do I mean by pure? Many of you take water from a tap, and if you're not eating and you have an empty system and an empty stomach, the chemicals that are in many city sources, many town sources, there are chemicals and pollutants and things that will perhaps make your time of fasting very difficult. And so I always tell people, if you're going to enter into a fast, make sure you have pure water. And there are very simple, inexpensive water purification systems that you can buy and have that available. I also encourage to put a little salt in your water, or if you have access, there are actually some supplements that you just take a small scoop and add it to your water that just adds electrolytes, because your body, even during a fast, most water does not have natural minerals and so forth. So pure water, and there's nothing wrong. It's actually advantageous. Add just a touch of salt, or go online and find some of the products that have electrolytes that can be added to your water. That will help you greatly when it comes to doing a fast. In the New Testament, we find the Greek word nestia for fast, which simply means self-crucifixion and self-denial. In 1 Samuel 1:7, the Bible said Hannah was so upset because she was unable to have a child that she wept and did not eat. 2 Samuel chapter 3, verse 35, the Bible says David refused to eat after the unnecessary death of his son Abner. There were people in the Bible that oftentimes went into fasting during times of difficulty and distress. 1 Kings 21:4, King Ahab would not eat when he was unable to secure Naboth's vineyard. These are all just a handful of passages to help you understand that fasting is not easy. It is literally the personal, willing affliction of your soul. Just before we conclude with the focus of the 7 medical benefits of fasting, let me give to you the 3 kinds of fast that we find in the Bible. In the Bible, we find what is oftentimes called an absolute fast. Now, what is an absolute fast? No water and no food, which can only be done for a very brief amount of time. No water and no food. That is not the kind of fast that I recommend, nor is it the common biblical fast. The common biblical fast would be called a normal fast. An absolute fast, no water, no food, but the standard often practiced by the early church and practiced even in the modern church is what we would call a normal fast. And a normal fast is no food whatsoever, but water. And it should be plenty of it. It wouldn't be wrong to consume half gallon, a gallon a day if you're in a hot climate. Very important that you stay hydrated during a time of fasting. And that's also part of the benefit, is it provides a cleansing and a flushing of the system and your kidneys and on when you have pure water. And then in the Bible, we also see a third type of fasting that is oftentimes called the partial fast. And that involves giving up certain foods for a number of days. And the Daniel fast oftentimes is used in the modern church, and that would be what some might call a partial fast. But again, what I consider the purest fast, what was practiced by the early church for over 400 years and is still practiced in many churches around the world today would be what I would call a normal fast. No food, but plenty of water. Let's get into the 7 benefits of fasting. And again, these are proven by ample studies and multiple medical journals and data. This is not something that is strained by a handful. This is mountains of evidence that sustain these 7 benefits. If you're taking notes, number 1, fasting will help you not only lose weight, but it will actually attack visceral fat, which is the unhealthy fat that is in the human body and oftentimes builds up. So number 1, fasting will help you lose weight and will break down visceral fat. Now, I want to be clear, the purpose of a biblical fast is not to lose weight. It's a side benefit, but that should not be your reason for going on a fast. Wow, my 25th high school reunion's coming up this summer, and I'm 37 pounds heavier than I was when I graduated in my senior year. I'm going to start doing some regular fasting between now and when I meet all of my classmates. That's not a biblical reason for fasting. That's actually a very carnal reason for fasting. But I'm telling you, medically, that's accepted as a healthy way of losing fat and losing visceral fat. Additionally, fasting enhances hormone function, which naturally facilitates weight loss. Lower insulin levels, higher HGH levels, and increased amounts of non-adrenaline all increase when you do a water fast to help the body purge itself of fat and utilize fat storage for energy. Many are surprised to learn that short-term fasting does not decrease your metabolism. Short-term fasting actually causes your metabolism to increase and primarily to attack fat cells. So, in other words, fasting works on both sides of the equation. It not only causes you to lose fat, in particular visceral fat, but it also has the added benefit of increasing your metabolism. Number 2, fasting reduces insulin resistance and lowers the risk for type 2 diabetes. There are studies of people who had been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes who, through a medically supervised, consistent practice of fasting, were actually healed from type 2 diabetes. Sadly, type 2 diabetes has become a very common malady in our modern age that has afflicted so many. And of course, its main feature is high blood sugar levels in the context of insulin resistance. And anything that reduces insulin resistance will help lower your blood sugar levels and protect you against type 2 diabetes. Listen very carefully. There are multiple medical studies that provide evidence that fasting has major benefits for insulin resistance and leads to a reduction in blood sugar levels, even to the point of people being cured from type 2 diabetes. Not all, but there are cases, but it really does help people avoid type 2 diabetes. Benefit number 3, fasting will reduce oxidative stress and inflammation in your body. There may be people who are listening to me that battle type 2 diabetes and battle inflammation and some of the ills that are associated with both of those. But oxidative stress is one of the steps towards aging, and it also is involved in moving the body towards multiple chronic diseases. It involves unstable molecules that in the medical world, and again, I'm not a doctor, but they're called free radicals, and many of you have heard that term. Free radicals react with other important molecules in your body, such as protein and your DNA, and damage them. Several studies show that fasting will enhance the body's resistance to oxidative stress. Additional studies show that fasting will fight inflammation, which is another key driver that moves the body towards other common diseases. Fasting will reduce oxidative damage and inflammation in your body and provides a natural benefit towards aging and the development of numerous diseases. Number 4, fasting is beneficial for heart health. Again, mountains of studies, mountains of science proving that fasting, not eating, only drinking pure water, and these studies are often done within the context of only a 24-hour period, not extended fast, although there are benefits to some extended fasting as well. But I'm talking by and large today about one 24-hour period of time when you stop eating and drink nothing but water. And of course, as Christians, we're teaching within the context of biblical fasting. If you eat 3 times a day, I would encourage you to spend 3 times a day in the Word and in prayer. Oftentimes in my fasting, at breakfast time, I don't pray, I spend time in the Bible, because prayer is communication with God, and communication has to be twofold. You'll receive much more in your life by obeying God and listening to God and understanding the precepts of God than you will by you constantly talking to God. More listening, less talking is a good pattern for prayer. And I'm not talking about sitting around trying to find the audible voice of God. The Bible is God's written voice. And so in my practice of fasting, I usually take what would be breakfast time and spend that time in the Word. And then at noon, I don't really take much time to pray or any time to pray at noon. I'll set aside private time, and I usually take a legal pad and a pen and my Bible, and I sit. Now, I may pray quietly in the Spirit, but I try to find a quiet place because the Lord speaks in a still small voice. And I try to spend time discerning. What do you want me to do? What is your direction? How do I handle this? How do I deal with that? And so forth. And I oftentimes can feel an impartation of God's wisdom during those times. And when I do, I write it down. And I check it against the Word to make sure it is indeed that which is God's wisdom, God's knowledge, God's understanding. And then I endeavor to carry out what I write down in the days ahead. And then in the evening, oftentimes, and this in the early days is when my wife Judy and the kids went to bed and the house was most quiet. Oftentimes then in the evening, I would find a place to spend some time in prayer. But many people are surprised that the medical world has discovered that the practice of fasting actually helps to heal the heart. You know, heart disease is currently the world's biggest killer. More people die of heart-related disease than any other malady on earth. And it's known that various health markers, so-called risk factors, are associated with either an increased or decreased risk of heart disease. Fasting has been shown to improve numerous risk factors, including your blood sugar levels, your blood pressure, your blood triglycerides, your total and EDL, which is the bad cholesterol, and inflammatory markers, and so forth. There are mountains of studies that give evidence to the fact that fasting, not eating, drinking pure water, helps to heal the heart and keep it healthy. Number 5, fasting may even help prevent cancer. Now, there are more and more studies in modern times that are mounting up to provide substantial evidence to the fact that there is a connection between fasting and the absence of cancer. Now, cancer is characterized by the uncontrolled growth of cells, and fasting has been shown to have several beneficial effects upon the metabolism that decrease the risk of cancer. There is also promising evidence that shows us that fasting actually causes people who are in treatment of cancer and taking chemotherapy, that the side effects of chemotherapy are reduced by those who fast. Number 6, fasting has multiple benefits for your brain function. What is good for the body is oftentimes good for the brain as well. Fasting improves various metabolic features known to be important to brain health. Fasting reduces, as we've already talked about, oxidative stress, inflammation, blood sugar levels, insulin resistance, and it increases levels of brain hormone called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which in the medical world is abbreviated in the studies that I was reading as BDNF. BDNF, if you want to Google and do some more studying on that. But a BDNF deficiency has been implicated in depression and several neurological deficits and problems. There are studies that have also shown that fasting protects against brain damage and strokes and even the recovery of strokes. There are also studies that suggest that fasting and people who consistently fast have a very low rate of Alzheimer's disease. There are also studies that suggest that fasting protects against multiple neurodegenerative diseases, including Parkinson's disease, Huntington's disease, and so on. And then number 7, and lastly, fasting may extend your lifespan and help you to live longer. One of the most exciting applications of fasting have been the mounting studies that give evidence that those who consistently fast have longer lifespans. And it comes as no surprise that multiple studies provide evidence that calorie restriction and increased health are linked together. I mean, you don't need to go to Harvard Medical School to convince somebody that calorie restriction and improved health walk hand in hand. I had someone recently tell me that you don't see obese people in their 90s except on rare occasions. And I want to be very careful here because I in no way want to be insensitive. I in no way, if you're battling weight or if you're listening to me and you're obese, I am in no way wanting to heap guilt upon you. I care about you. God cares about you. It's not God's will for everybody to be skinny, but I do believe it's God's will for all of us to play a part in being healthy. If you had listened to me preach over the past 4 decades, there's one thing that I have consistently preached and taught and have never wavered from, and that is in the subject of divine healing. Biblical healing is cooperative. What do you mean by that? Throughout the scriptures, we read that self-crucifixion, self-discipline, the control of physical appetites, the control of your weight, etc., are connected to your health. That's just simply in the Bible. And so I'm going to read some passages that for some might be hard to hear. But I want to preface my remarks by saying, if you're listening to me and you're battling obesity or battling various chronic diseases or it runs in your family, I don't want to hurt your feelings. I want to preface my remarks by telling you I love you. But I'm certainly not going to tear scriptures out of the Bible, because those scriptures are in the Bible as guardrails, not to hurt you, but to help you. And my advice to you would be, why don't you pray and ask God to give you what for you would be a healthy weight, and begin to make progress towards that. Maybe enlist the help of other believers, or many churches have people in the church or programs in the church that aid people that are trying to make progress in their health. But God will help you with that. And there's probably not many listening to me. From this preacher on down the line, all of us could probably stand to lose some weight. But the Bible in particular speaks about gluttony, which would be best rendered as obesity. And the reason the Bible warns against obesity is because it is a sign that food plays too much of a role in your life. Jesus said, anyone who's going to follow me must be willing to crucify themselves, take up a cross, and follow. The very essence of Christianity is crucifying the appetites of the flesh. And the book of Proverbs warns against